Well, welcome to week 6. I wanted to take a few moments and give you an introduction. This week, our focus is on postmodernity and two cultural responses to postmodernity, the emerging church and the house church movement. We're posting 2 lectures this week. First, Andy Opie is my TA in this class, but more than that, we've officially applied to have him become a full co-teacher for this class, and they're evaluating him for that process. Andy is currently working through his PhD on intercultural studies and is an expert in many of these subjects. As we move into evaluating current models, Andy will be presenting some of the lectures and areas of his expertise. Thus, for today, or this week, there will be a lecture from Andy that focuses on postmodernity, as well as one from me that provides a quick overview of postmodernity and then discusses the emerging church and the house church movement as legitimate responses. Let's talk about our reading for this week. The reading for this week focuses on postmodernity and the emerging church and house church movements. The first, I want to just talk about postmodernity. I have to admit that I don't completely buy into the either or postmodern paradigm that is often presented today. As I look at it, it's like, well, before this they were modern and now they're postmodern. I'm thinking the world just seems more complex than that. I imagine Wild West cowboys were moderns while drug pushers are postmodern. Gold rush millionaires were moderns while Bitcoin billionaires are postmoderns. I mean, I just don't know. You look at all the complexity of our world. In other words, I believe that culture is much more complex and cannot be boiled down into oversimplifications that classify people from multiple continents, nations, social, economic, ethnic, and other distinctive descriptions as if they were all the same or approach life within the same framework. I just don't buy it. Such thinking does a disservice to the diversity both then and now. If you believe differently, no problem with me. That's what scholarly discussion is all about. As we dig into the material, keep in mind that what is key is the mission of God. In other words, engaging culture is all about being a missionary to the culture, so that where helpful, we can borrow culturally valid artifacts without embracing all that a certain ministry style stands for. In other words, I can see something from the different various streams of the emerging church or the house church or the mega church or whatever. I can see aspects of that and say, I love that. There's no reason that I have to be my little straight and narrow. I can grab pieces from different places and say, and put them together into a mosaic of here's some things that God are doing in the world in a unique way. It can create a blend of how we approach the gospel in our own community. For our reading this week, you have reading in both Carson and Crouch. I do want to make mention because Carson deals so directly with the emerging church and postmodernity that in addition to our text, Carson published God and Culture in 1993, and again, Becoming Conversant with the Emerging Church in 2005. As a scholar, Carson then engages his discussion with careful and thoughtful research. So Carson isn't just talking off the top of his head. He's been known as both an expert in God and culture and in the emerging church, and he brings that all together in his most current book here. Articles. I've posted multiple articles for you to read, plus offered even more as optional reading. I've attempted to provide material from various perspectives to challenge your thinking as we look forward to reading your responses in the discussion board. In fact, I wanted to post about 10 more, and I finally just limited myself, and you're going to be overwhelmed. But I only have one discussion question, and I do that deliberately because I want to give us more time to interrelate with the material and less time talking on the discussion board. So I've deliberately tried to focus our time, which I thought would be a little more effective. Plus this week we have our literature review due. For posting, there's only, as I mentioned, only one discussion question this week with several options. So I think we've given you 3 options to choose from. So we'll have 3 questions within that one discussion question. Choose any one. The reality is, if you don't resonate with any of those, feel free to approach the subject of postmodernity, the emerging church, the house church movement, proximity places. I mean, we've discussed a lot this week. If none of that quite connects with you, and sometimes it can feel like everyone's saying the same thing about the same things, and you want to break out and propose your own question, then do it. What I would ask is that write out your question and kind of like propose your own question and then answer it so people can see where you're going. But feel free to break out of the norm. This week is all about open discussion around postmodernity and the emerging church and the house church movement, and basically wrestling with how can we reach this crazy world of ours. Finally, we have our paper due on Sunday night. Be sure to focus on getting your literature review paper done. Is a 10% deduction if you don't turn it in on Sunday night. So after that, it's not an accrual deduction. It's 10%, do or die. Doesn't matter the reason, unless you got doctor's papers showing you were in the hospital. You should have planned ahead. If your aunt came over, that's just not going to cut it, because you've had plenty of time and I've been pushing you along. Get it done. The reality is it takes me between 1 and 3 hours to grade, maybe more, 1 and 4 hours to grade every single paper. So if we have 25 papers, I'm going to be investing 100 hours. So don't be complaining about how much time you're going to be spending in this class next week, because you're going to get your due revenge on me next week when I have to grade all these papers. But I go through them in detail. Now, the reality is, and when I say between 1 and 4, a really good paper takes me 1 hour. A really bad paper takes me 4 hours. So how do you think I'm feeling? Because the last thing I do is grade. How do you think I'm feeling about grading a paper that I've had to spend 4 hours on, because I'm spending hours correcting things because you didn't take the time to correct them? I mean, you're not checking your spelling, you're not looking up your style. I mean, and then guess what? I have to then do all that. So do it, and do it right. You're at a different level. This is not the BA level. This is not college level. This is a master's program. So rise up to that standard. Push yourself. If you need help, reach out to others around you that can help you with some of those things. But let's turn in the best quality that we can. And I'm going to be tough on you. That's my job. My job is to make you excellent. And if I'm soft on you, you're not going to grow. So I'm going to, just like I did with your literature review, I'm going to look at that. And I've had a number of students send me back, well, could you take another look at this? I corrected everything. And I look at it and what about this? What about this? What about this? I mean, learn to step back from it and then just read and look for all those little details. All those details do matter. For what you need to do, be sure to review Calvin. Don't just, you read him a month ago and now you can forget about him. Keep him by you as you're reading. You're like, how do I approach this? Look in the beginning of Calvin. Look in his, where does he deal with that subject? And remind yourself, refresh yourself, because he will guide you on how to do an excellent job. Remember to format the entire paper in APA style. Galvin, unfortunately, doesn't use APA, so don't copy Galvin. Copy APA. Galvin just guides how to, but style is actually different than Galvin. Most importantly, the purpose of the paper is not for you to settle the issue that is burning in your heart. You're not trying to argue anything. You're not trying to prove anything. You can do that in another venue. That's not this paper. This paper is not for you to establish the subject. This paper is for you to review what is the status of the literature in the subject. So you can say, here's the different perspectives that I found, and they contend, and research has shown this and this and this and this, and you're just marshaling the information. In another venue, you'll get your opportunity to argue for or to prove a certain perspective. Right now, you're just representing this is what's known. Objective. Don't put yourself into it. This is what's known. Even if you don't agree with it, this is what's been proven. Even if you don't like it, this is what it is. Just lay it out there. Where's the stream of the discussion going? What's been covered? Where are there holes in the argument? Where does further research need to be made? Also, 90% of students either don't write an abstract, which is required in APA, or they get it wrong. I can't say, I don't think 10%. I think 2% of papers that I've received first time around get the abstract right. Surprise me. The whole class get the abstract right. It's not an introduction. Don't assume you know what it is and just write it. Go back and I don't know what style, where you get your style sheets from. I use often, I've said this before, Purdue OWL, and they do a good explanation and an example of what an abstract looks like, what to approach it. The abstract should be the very last thing you write. It should be like you're not yourself. You don't write it to what you're going to study. Future tense, I'm going to study, I'm going to do. That's an introduction. Don't use that. An abstract is like a Reader's Digest, super Reader's Digest of your paper. It basically says this paper covers this subject. It reviews this and this and this, and it finds this. So it basically tells what the subject is, reviews the top topics that you cover with any key observations, and a conclusion, and recommends further research in, and it gives that, again, shortened. You get one paragraph that should be less than one page. And I don't remember, like 600 words or 800 words. Look it up, it'll tell you. And you have to summarize everything, but it's a Reader's Digest, as if a third person was writing a summary of your paper. That's an abstract. So look it up and surprise me. Well, happy writing, happy reading, happy listening. Have a great week. I'll see you in the discussion board.